Thank you for that warm welcome. Lieutenant Governor Reynolds, thank you for introduction. Governor, good to see you here. We've got wonderful friends in this room, and I appreciate the chance to see you again. It's good to be back in Iowa, and so many friends here in this room and across the state hold a very special place in my heart, and I appreciate your coming to spend a few moments with me today. I've come here today to talk to you about an issue that affects the very heart of America. And of course, Iowa is much more than a collection of beautiful farms and small towns and cities bounded by two of America's great rivers. Iowa is also a collection of the values that built America and that have sustained us through good. Iowa is also a collection of the values that built America and that have sustained us through good times and bad. And you know well what those values are. Hard work, taking care of our neighbors, family, common sense. Common sense, kitchen table values, not fancy but enduring values. These aren't the values that lead to out-of-control spending sprees or to piling up debt that you know that your children and grandchildren will have to pay off all the days of their lives. These aren't the values of putting off difficult decisions with the hope that maybe someone else down the road will solve them. Today, as you just heard from the Lieutenant Governor, America faces a financial crisis of both debt and spending that threaten what it means to be an American. Here in the heartland, you know in your hearts that that's wrong. We can't spend another 4 years talking about solving a problem that we know that we're making worse every single day. When the men and women who settled the Iowa prairie saw a fire in the distance, they didn't look around for someone else to save them or go back to sleep and hope the wind might change directions. They knew that survival was up to them. A prairie fire of debt is sweeping across Iowa and across the nation. And every day that we fail to act, that fire gets closer to the homes and the children we love. Now, you know also this is not solely a Democrat or Republican problem. The issue isn't who deserves the most blame. The issue is who is going to do what it takes to put out the fire. Now, the people of Iowa and of America have watched President Obama nearly 4 years now, much of that time with Congress controlled by his own party. And rather than putting out that spending fire, he's been feeding it. He has spent more and borrowed more. The time has come for a president, a leader, who will lead. I will lead us out of this debt and spending inferno. We will stop borrowing unfathomable sums of money we can't even imagine from foreign countries we're never even going to visit. I will work with you to make sure we put out this spending and borrowing fire. A lot of people think this is a problem we can't solve. And I reject that kind of can't-do defeatist talk. It's wrong. What's happened here isn't complicated. Washington has been spending too much money, and our new president made things worse. His policies have taken us backwards. Almost a generation ago, Bill Clinton announced that the era of big government was over. Even a former campaign worker like President Clinton was signaling to his own party that Democrats should no longer try to govern by proposing a new program for every problem. President Obama tucked away the Clinton doctrine in his large drawer of discarded ideas, along with transparency and bipartisanship. It's enough to make you wonder if maybe it was a personal beef with the Clintons, but probably it runs much deeper than that. President Obama is an old school liberal whose first instinct is to see free enterprise as the villain and government as the hero. America counted on President Obama to rescue the economy, to tame the deficit, and help create jobs. Instead, he bailed out the public sector, gave billions of your dollars to companies of his friends, and added almost as much debt to this country as all the prior presidents combined. The consequence is that we are now enduring the most tepid recovery in modern history. The consequence is that half the kids who are graduating from college can't find a job that uses their skills. Half. The consequence is that retirees can no longer get by on their savings and Social Security. The consequence is that the length of time it takes an unemployed worker to find a job is the longest on record. That's why even those who voted for Barack Obama are disappointed in him. Disappointment is the key in which the president's re-election is being played. Americans will not settle for 4 more years of the same melancholy song. We can and must do better than that. President Obama started out with a near $1 trillion stimulus package. It was the biggest, most careless one-time expenditure by the federal government in history. And remember this, the stimulus wasn't just wasted, it was borrowed and wasted. We still owe the money. We're still paying interest on it. And it will be that way long after this president's out of office. Then, of course, came Obamacare. Even now, nobody knows what it's actually going to cost. And that uncertainty, by the way, has slowed the economy. Employers delay hiring. Entrepreneurs put off starting new businesses because of this massive European-style entitlement that Americans didn't want and certainly cannot afford. When you add up all of his policies, by the way, this president has increased the national debt by $5 trillion. Let me put that in a way that it's easier for us all to comprehend, because frankly, $1 trillion is a number we can't put our minds around. Your household's share, each household share, your household share of government debt and unfunded liabilities has now reached more than $520,000 per average American household. Think about what that means. Your household will be taxed year after year just to pay the interest on that debt and to pay the principal payments on those liabilities. Every year, you're going to be paying for things that have happened in the past. And then it's going to get passed along to your kids. They're going to struggle with the interest on our debts. And President Obama is adding to them every single day. And that, by the way, is the best case scenario. The interest rate on that debt could go up like a rocket, just like an adjustable mortgage goes up. And there's also a good chance that this kind of debt could cause us to hit a wall like they have in Greece and Spain and Italy. Subprime mortgages. They came close to bringing this economy to its knees. This debt is America's nightmare mortgage. It's adjustable, no money down, and assigned to our children. And politicians have been trying to hide the truth about this nightmare mortgage for years, just like liar loans. This is not just bad economics. It is morally wrong, and we must stop it. Let me give you some ideas about things we can do to do just that. During my years in business and also in state government, I came to recognize that the economy has 3 major players, if you will. The private sector, free enterprise, the states and localities, and then the federal government. Now, of the 3, the private sector is by far the most efficient and cost-effective in providing to the people of our nation the products and services they want. That's because scores and scores of businesses and thousands upon thousands of entrepreneurs are competing every day to find a way to deliver a product or a service that's better than anyone else's. They're all trying to come up with something better. Think about smartphones, for instance. BlackBerry got things going, and then Apple introduced the iPhone, and now the Android platform is leading the market. In a world of free enterprise, competition brings us better and better products at lower and lower cost. That's the whole idea. Not because they're all smarter, but because there's so many people competing with ideas, trying to come up with better ways to come up with better products. And the customer, that's us, by the way, is who benefits from all this. Now, government doesn't begin to compare when it comes to the change and improvements that provide better and less expensive services and products. Can't compare with the private sector. But among governments, by the way, the states and localities are more responsive than the federal government, probably because there's some degree of competition between them. With states, after all, there are 50 that compete with one another, and localities, there are a lot of them as well. But by far the slowest and least responsive sector is the federal government. Has no competition that it recognizes. Nobody hears Washington, D.C., that home of efficiency. Now just imagine if the federal government was the sole legal supplier of cell phones. All right? First of all, they'd still be under review. All right? You'd be listening to hearings in Congress on cell phones. And when they were finally approved, the contract to make them would go to an Obama donor. And of course, they'd come out looking about the size of a shoe with a collapsible solar panel attached to them, all right? And of course, campaign donors would be lining up to see who could get appointed to become the app czar, all right? My point is this, and it's an important point. As President Obama and old school liberals like him absorb more and more of our economy into government, and government gets bigger and bigger, and the private sector, which is efficient, gets smaller, then everything we do becomes more expensive, less efficient, less useful. Government makes America less competitive. The more government, the more expensive it is. What President Obama is doing is not bold. It's old. As president, I want to make the federal government simpler, smaller, and smarter. This was part of the brilliance of the founders. They recognized that individual people, citizens, pursuing their own dreams would be able to create a stronger, more vibrant life for the American people than the government. And that's why what I'm describing is consistent with our Constitution. This is why I don't for one moment share my opponent's belief that our spending problems can be solved with more taxes. You don't owe Washington a bigger share of your paycheck. Instead of putting more limits on your earnings and on your options and on your enterprises, we need to place clear and firm limits on government and on its spending. And as a right now, the federal government spends about a quarter of the entire economy. I want to bring that down to 20% of the economy within 4 years. So by the end of my first term, we've dramatically scaled back the intrusiveness and the size and borrowing of the federal government. Now, the president's plan assumes an endless expansion of government with rising costs and, of course, with the spread of Obamacare. I will halt the expansion of government, and I will repeal Obamacare. Now, working together, we can save Social Security without making any changes in the system for people nearing retirement. We have two basic options to do that for future retirees. No change again for current retirees or near retirees. One would be a tax increase for high-income retirees or high-income retirees-to-be. The other would be to decrease the rate of benefit growth for high-income retirees-to-be. Now, I favor the second option because it protects everyone who's in the system or near it, and it also avoids higher taxes that drag down the economy and make it harder to create jobs. I've also proposed a plan for Medicare that improves that program and keeps it solvent and slows the rate of growth of cost in health care. Both of those reforms are relatively simple compared to the far more difficult choices we're going to face if we do nothing. And of course, Medicare and Social Security are also very easy to demagogue. And I expect the president to continue doing that throughout the campaign. But Americans are onto that game. And I'm not going to insult the voters by pretending that we can just keep putting off entitlement reform. I'm going to continue to speak honestly to the American people, and if elected, I will do what is right for the people of this great country. Now, the President's made very little effort to rein in redundancy and waste. Think about these numbers. In 2011, the Government Accountability Office found 34 areas where agencies, offices, or initiatives in the federal government had overlapping objectives or providing similar services. The GAO estimated that reducing the redundancy could save over $100 billion. Yet a year later, only 3 of the 34 areas has even been fully addressed, and only 1 program has actually been defunded. In 2010, 17 federal government agencies gave $7.7 billion more to the United Nations than is required under our agreement with the United Nations. Another example, there are 94 federal programs in 11 agencies that encourage green buildings. A report found that the results of those initiatives and investments are, quote, unknown. We see the same bureaucracy and overhead in our anti-poverty programs. Last year, the federal government spent more than $600 billion on more than 100 different anti-poverty programs, all of them designed to help those who couldn't help themselves. My approach to federal programs and bureaucracy is entirely different. Move programs to states or to the private sector where they can be run more efficiently and where we can do a better job helping the people who need our help. Shut down programs that aren't working. Cut them off. Eliminate them. Get rid of them. Obamacare #1. And then, of course, streamline everything else that's left. It is time for the people of America to take back the government of America, and we're going to get that job done. Entitlement reform, doing away with the redundancy and waste in government, and shifting services and programs to the economic player who can deliver them best. These are the serious steps toward getting our debt and spending under control that I'm going to take. But above all, we need to shake off the static big government mindset of these past few years and all the limits and regulations that go with them. We need a big turnaround here, and it's going to require a focused, unrelenting, long-term agenda for economic growth. Instead of leading the world in how much we borrow, we've got to continue to lead the world in how much we build and create and invent. With all that we've been through these last few years, the challenges can seem awfully big. And some might look at America and wonder if we have lost our confidence. But confidence isn't what's missing. All that's lacking now is the right direction and leadership. These have been years of disappointment and of decline. And soon we can put all that behind us. We can prosper again with the powerful recovery we've all been waiting for, the good jobs that so many still need, and above all, the opportunities we owe to our children and our grandchildren. All this can be more than our hope. It can actually be our future. It can begin this year in the choice you make. So I'm asking for your help, your support, your vote on the 6th of November. This is a critical year. This is a decisive year. This is a year where we decide what kind of America we're going to have, with larger and larger government, less and less efficient, more and more expensive, more and more borrowing, a nightmare mortgage, crushing our future and the future for our children, or instead returning to the vibrance and power of America as we know it. I'm convinced that you're going to see in this nation a resurgence in our manufacturing sector, a resurgence in innovation, and startups and new businesses creating new jobs. My vision for the future is a bright and prosperous one. We're not weighed down with the problems of the past if we have a leader who understands the potential of the future. With your help, working together, getting Iowa in my column in November, we can get America back on track so you can be confident that your children and theirs will have a brighter future than even what we've enjoyed during our lives. Thank you so much, and God bless this great country.